right, hello. So we're still solving algebraic equations, and this is the example that we have right now. It's called difference of two squares, and so it's important to recognize that an expression is a difference of two squares. When I say expression, I'm just talking about this side right here. Okay. Then of course, if you have an equation that you're solving, and this is a quadratic function, meaning the highest exponent is 2, then you have to make sure that your equation is set to 0, which it is in this example. Okay, so how do we know it's a difference of two squares? Okay, so an example of this, the easy example would be a squared minus b squared. Okay, now the difference means a minus sign. So there is a minus sign in between two perfect squares. So a squared is the first term, second term is a b squared. Now a squared is a perfect square because the exponent of a is 2. It's an even number. So you would know if an exponential expression is a perfect square if the exponent is even. Okay. So for instance, if you have x to the fourth, yes, this is a perfect square because when you take the square of x to the fourth, it's gonna be x to the second. So you divide the exponent. If you have m to the sixth, y to the eighth, yes, this is a perfect square because when you take the square root of that, it's gonna be m third because that's 6 divided by 2, y to the fourth. So that's how you know if it's a perfect square. All right, so now if you have indeed have a difference of two squares, there's a subtraction in between two perfect squares on both sides of the minus sign, then all you gotta do to factor it is prepare your two parentheses for the factors. Take the square root of the first term, which is a, put that here, both gets an a, and then take the square root of b squared, that's gonna be b, all right? One is plus and one is minus. Okay, so let's look at our first example. You need to check, is this a difference of two squares? Yes, well, let's check. There is that minus sign, so that's the difference part. Now, 9x squared is a perfect square because 9 is a perfect square. X squared exponent is 2. It is a perfect square. So this is a perfect square. 16 is also a perfect square because the square root of 16 is 4 or positive 4. So now you have a difference of two squares. So according to our formula here, how do we factor them? Well, all you got to do is prepare your two parentheses, equals 0 here for that equals in the 0. Take the square root of the first part. So that's going to be 3x and 3x. The square root of 16, that's going to be a 4, a 4. One is plus, one is minus. So that is why it is very important to know if it's a difference of two squares because there already is a formula for you to follow. Okay, so now that you have two factors that has some sort of x, we will solve for each one. So 3x plus 4 equals 0, and the other one is 3x minus 4 equals 0. Separately solving them, minus 4 on both sides. So now you have 3x equals negative 4 divided by 3. Therefore, x is negative 4 thirds. So this is your first answer, okay? Now, on the second one, we solve for x again, plus 4 because that's a minus 4, plus 4. You always do the opposite operation. So now you have 3x equals 4. You divide by 3. You divide by 3. X equals 4 thirds. So now this is your second answer. Now, how do we know that we should have two answers? Well, look at this one here. The highest exponent or the highest degree of your equation is a 2. So that means you are expecting two answers. Now, those two answers may be the same, but it's still the same way. You still have two answers. Okay, so now let's move on to our second example. Is this a difference of two squares? Maybe, maybe not. Okay, we'll find out. But first things first, we need to make sure that this other side right here is 0. So what we're going to do is I'm going to subtract 1 so that the right side of my equal sign is 0. And I'm going to subtract 1 here too. So now these are not like terms. I'm going to do 81 x to the fourth minus 1 equals 0. So now we're good. We have an equal to 0. So let's check. Well, there's a minus sign. So yes, for sure, there's a difference. 84x to the fourth. Well, I mean 81x to the fourth. 81 is a perfect square. X to the fourth has an even power. So therefore, that is a perfect square. And then 1, of course, is a perfect square. Square root of 1 is 1. So now we can prepare our factors. Okay. All right. So now what is 81x to the fourth? Square root of that? Well, that would be 9x to the second. 9x to the second. What is the square root of 1? That's going to be a 1, a 1. 1 is plus, 1 is minus. Okay, so we're good. Now, well, let's check some more. This one, you could have factored this one already, but if you observe carefully, you have two factors right now. On the first factor, this one right here, you have 9x squared plus 1. So that's not really a difference, right? Because there's a plus. So you can leave that alone. So this is gonna be it. This is as simplified as it can be. That's a prime number. That's a prime factor as it is. However, on this one right here, 9x squared is also a perfect square. 1 is a perfect square. There's a minus in between. So the second factor, you can factor it some more. Okay. All right. So what's the square root of 9x squared? That's going to be a 3x, and this is going to be a 3x. The square root of 1 is 1, and then 1. 1 is plus, 1 is minus. So this is your, all of these are your, you have three factors for this expression right here, or that equation right there. Okay, so now if you want to solve for them, then of course you have 3. Okay, so that's going to be 9x squared plus 1 equals 0. 3x plus 1 equals 0. 3x minus 1 equals 0. Okay, I'm going to let you solve for the last two. The first one, I'm going to solve. So this is a minus 1 minus 1. So now you have 9x squared equals negative 1. We will divide by 9. Divide by 9. So now I'm going to put that somewhere here, okay, because I'm running out of space. So you have x squared, because the 9 will cancel out, negative 1 over 9. Okay, so now we take the square root of that. Okay, we want to take the square root of this, but this is a negative. If you use your calculator, that will be an error, right? So when you take the square root of a negative number, that actually is an imaginary number. So this will become x, and then the I will come out because that's an imaginary number, but you can factor out 1/9, and that's going to be 1/3. So that's going to be 1/3 I, right? For the imaginary part, for the square root of negative. And because this is a square root, you will have a positive and a negative answer. So just in this case, in this particular one here, you have positive, negative, 1/3 I. So you have two answers here, one positive 1/3 I and negative 1/3 I. So two answers here, one answer here, one answer here. So total of four answers, which is what your expectation, because the highest exponent is 4. All right, see you. If you have any question, let me know. Message me in the comment box or email me. See you then.